Hello everybody, my name is Morgan. Some of you know this about me, maybe some of you don't, but I moved back to Toledo, kind of boomerang effect, right, from San Francisco a little bit over a year ago. And I wanted to talk to you guys about San Francisco a little bit. People think of San Francisco, they think of, free love and cultural revolution and activism and all sorts of great stuff, but maybe some of you just know this or maybe some of you don't. It wasn't always that way. San Francisco about 50 years ago, 60 years ago was kind of like an average city. It was, a little bit more libertine, a little bit more progressive, but it was not what we think of today as San Francisco values. It was kind of an Irish Catholic town. It was kind of, nothing too crazy. And that changed about 50 years ago with a thing that happened. Some of you may have heard of in the Haight-Ashbury. The hippies came in and, took a bunch of LSD and, rock and roll concert, and the festival was born and all that kind of stuff. But there's actually a group sort of in a subset in that hippie movement that a lot of people don't know about. And I think this group really had a huge impact in shifting the culture of San Francisco and in fact shifting a lot of culture around the world. And it was a group called the Diggers. And I've claimed before that the Diggers were the original Civic Hackers. The Diggers kind of formed in 1966 in response to this thing that was mushrooming in the Haight. Thousands of kids were pouring into that community in the Haight-Ashbury, and the government, the city government, was just not willing to do anything about it. In fact, they were antagonistic to it all. They cut off services and really did their best to make the new people unwelcome. And the Diggers were a group of people that came out of the San Francisco mime troupe. So they kind of invented this idea of guerrilla theater. They were taking theater out of the theaters, right? And they were putting it into the streets, into the parks, doing theater in the streets and trying to get people where they were at. And the Diggers were kind of a radical group that broke off from the mime troupe and said, hey, the revolution's happening in Haight-Ashbury, enough with this, art as politics crap, we gotta go and take it up a notch, right? And so they came up with this idea of life acting. They said, okay, guerrilla theater is cool, but what if all of life was an opportunity to act out the world that we wanted to create, act the role that we wanted to be, and act out this community that takes care of each other, that takes care of these thousands of kids streaming into the Haight. And they created things like giving away free food every day, and they had a free store and free crash pads and a free bank and free transportation, and they were trying to create this thing called the free city. And they're really trying to act out a world where people took care of each other, sort of, they call it mutualism, sort of post-capitalism. They knew they couldn't get from A to Z, create that revolution overnight, but they wanted to create an opportunity for people to kind of play around in that space. And they did all that partly because they wanted to tell people, hey, you don't need to go have a 9-to-5 job to get something to eat. We're going to give you food every day. You don't need to go to have a job to get something to wear, to have a roof over your head. You can do all of that with what we're providing. So if you don't need that, what would you do? What would you do with your life? And they really made a big impact. They really brought a sort of a more well-developed worldview to this kind of crazy acid party that was going on in the Haight, and really inspired a lot of people. And that didn't really end. I mean, we kind of think that it failed, but it didn't really fail. It just kind of decentralized the whole hippie movement and went to other parts of the country, and back to the land movement was really big in the late 60s, early 70s. And so what we think of now as San Francisco values really started with this kind of small group of people who decided to create the world that they wanted because the government wasn't going to be providing it for them, right? And I tell that story not for a historical lesson, but because I think a lot of us here are interested in how we can create a cultural shift here in Toledo. There are a lot of great things about Toledo's culture that I think we can all recognize, but Toledo is not a thriving city. I think we're excited about some new developments and there's some good things happening, but even in comparison to places like Detroit or Grand Rapids or Indianapolis or a lot of the cities that we sort of are alike in the Midwest and the Rust Belt here, we're still a little bit behind the curve. And I think one of the reasons for that is that there are not as many people as some of those other cities that are interested in taking things into their own hands and making a project that they have in mind, you know, feeding people for free because they want to, or some of the things that we're doing here at Code City, right? There are things that are happening, but we need more of these people. And I call these people Civic Hackers. And I know we're here at Seed, and I recognize some of the folks from when we came and talked about Erie Hack. Traditionally, the idea of civic hacking is from a coding world, kind of from that idea of a hackathon where you get together and you write a program over a weekend to, you know, make the street lights work better or try to cut into crime or whatever particular civic issue that you're trying to solve. And I want to expand that definition of civic hacking, that it's not just coding, although coding can be an amazing part of that process, but it can be an event that you want to throw. It can be you know, a mural you want to paint. It's any sort of spirit or attitude that you bring to the day where you're taking your idea and you're making it happen, or you're inspiring other people to kind of step into that space. That's what I really think we need here in Toledo, is just more people who are, you know, not going to wait around for the government to solve our problems, that we're going to get together, and whether we want to code something that's going to be a solution to something, maybe we want to, you know, organize an event, that we make that happen. And so we've started a program that we're piloting this summer. Some of you heard about, but those of you who haven't, it's called Civic Digs. And the idea is to kind of act out that world where we're a little bit more involved on the civic level in our neighborhoods and downtown and so forth. And we're going to be engaging in a number of tactics to further inspire other people to get engaged in that spirit. And the tactics are, one is kind of, we'll just start with the sort of the crown jewel really, is this thing we're working on called Free Space. This is something I did in San Francisco. We actually did it for the first National Day of Civic Hacking in 2013, and we ended up getting invited to the White House, being honored as champions of change there. And the idea is to take a vacant space. There's only a few more on this block, but certainly there's plenty around town, and to activate those spaces with probably about 9 or 10 days of kind of open space, right? And asking people around town to come and fill it up with whatever you want to do. Maybe you want to have a talk about how you can get free energy, right? We heard that from Jason a week or two ago. Maybe you want to host a blanket fort making party. Maybe you want to host an urban wandering tour. We just wander around downtown and discover things that we wouldn't notice because we're always just going to and fro everywhere. What if we just kind of meander a little bit? I mean, it's whatever. Maybe we want to give away free flowers. Maybe we want to have a water balloon fight. Whatever it is, the idea is that this space is going to exist as an empty vessel, and it's going to be the thing that inspires people to say, hey, I've always wanted to do this thing, right? Maybe we'll wheel a piano out into into Levis Square and have a piano and see what happens, right? So Free Space is something that we're going to be working on, and all of these you guys are invited to join in, very much in that spirit of how can we attract more people to kind of step into this space. So we're probably going to make that happen in August. We're looking at some different spaces. If you're interested in any of this, let's chat more, okay? I've got some cards if we're not already connected. Another thing that we're working on that's kind of in this space is this thing that we call the Urban Eating League. This is an underground dinner that we host. It's really kind of, again, creating a vessel for people to fill with their own creativity. The basics are that we're going to be, this is happening on July 1st, so in a couple weeks in the Old West End. And the idea is that we have 3 houses that are going to be competing against each other to cook the best food and create the best experience around a theme. The theme is America the Bountiful, aka Murica. And then eaters pay for the food. It's $25 a ticket. And the eaters are organized into 6 teams of 4, and they're also competing to have the best costumes around the theme. So you and your team go to all 3 of the houses in the evening, and you vote on different categories, who had the best food, who had the most creativity, and we total it all up at the end of the evening, and there's a winner. The prizes are not very glamorous. It's really more for the fun and to meet new people and to build those bonds and to be inspired by each other's creativity. And so that's happening July 1st. Tickets are not quite on sale to the public, but you guys can have the first shot, really, besides our very important eaters who already had a chance. So the URL is muricauel.eventbrite.com, and you can check that out. So that's happening in a couple weeks. We'll also be doing, we hope to produce a Civic Hackathon, a 24-hour Civic Hackathon. That would be a great thing. That's kind of a little bit farther. It's not really the thing we're focusing on. The Urban Eating League's up first, then we got a couple other things we're going to talk about in a second. So that's an idea still. I think it would be a great thing to have maybe in partnership with Seed. So maybe we can talk about that. But basically a 24-hour competition where we say, okay, the spirit that we have of Civic Digs, let's just shrink it into 24 hours. What do you got? Let's do it. Let's make it happen. Let's see what happens after 24 hours. Who has the coolest idea? Who's the farthest along? Take what we did for, it ended up being Erie Hack. We had to change the name for reasons that were way beyond my control. And focus it just on Toledo. What does Toledo need? What if we put a sculpture across the river in International Park that was a giant halo that glowed at night, and you could get under there and have a picture, be the backdrop with the halo over the top, and it would say Holy Toledo. That's an idea. Maybe we can make it happen, maybe we can't. So we want to make a Civic Hackathon happen where we try to, again, inspire people to just act on these ideas for 24 hours. You don't have to do it for 365 days. What if we could do it for one day? And the other things we're going to be doing are we're going to be designing some stuff for the Botanical Garden around the Crosby Festival, which is this weekend. I hope you guys are all coming. We actually are going to be doing a project that my friend Hunter started called the Neighborhood Postcard Project, and we're going to have postcards that say greetings from Toledo, and we're going to have people tell stories about what they love about Toledo, because I think a lot of people, whether they're in Toledo or maybe somewhere else, I think a lot of people in Toledo are kind of down on Toledo, so we can work on that, remind people what's great about this place, and people who don't live in Toledo don't know much about Toledo, or maybe have bad ideas about it, and we can help change the narrative of Toledo. So we're going to be doing that this weekend. And then in the fall, they've got this thing, ZimSculpt, coming, and we're going to be helping them come up with some ideas. It's basically a Zimbabwe sculpture installation, and they want to have more events and stuff to keep people coming back over the 2 months. So we're going to come up with like silent discos and movie nights and that kind of stuff. So we're going to be doing that. We're also going to be working with the library, trying to help the library solve some design needs that they have. They really want to try to connect with millennials that don't have kids. And so we're just starting to brainstorm some of that. That's another one that's not quite as urgent as, for example, this weekend. So this is the idea of Civic Digs, to have a sort of focus. The pilot is this summer, but we want to do this again and again, have these different sort of like sessions of 2 to 3 months where we get together and really challenge ourselves to step into that space where we're more active in Toledo. And the best thing that we can do when we're more active in Toledo is inspiring other people to become more active. You know, there's only so many people in this room, and if we can focus our energy on how can we activate more people, then that's going to be really the best use of our energy, because there's a lot of creativity out there, there's a lot of untapped potential, and if we can just, you know, inspire people to get more engaged, then we're going to be the success story like Detroit's looking like it's going to be, or Grand Rapids or Indianapolis, right? And that's really, I think, a key for what we can, you know, make this city a great city, make Toledo great again, I guess. So I want one last thing though before we can do questions. Then we're going to do some open space technology. Is that right, Nate? Yeah. Open up to start some of those conversations maybe. And one of the things that the Diggers had going for them, and the whole Haight-Ashbury thing, one of the things, I used to teach a class on the Haight-Ashbury at the University of San Francisco and this whole movement, the Diggers. And one of the things I always told my students was one of the most important elements of that whole movement was that those people woke up every single day and really truly believed that they were changing the world, that they were the avant-garde, they were the tip of the spear, and they were going to make transformation happen. Revolution was coming any day. And they really believed that. And they kind of almost got there, you know? It didn't look exactly like they thought it was going to look, but it changed the world. And so that's a lesson that I like to teach to my students, and I hope to pass on to you guys, that if you don't believe, truly believe that you're going to make it happen, then it doesn't happen, right? Real easy situation. You guys all believed that you could come to this event tonight, right? That's the first step. But then you have to decide to do it as well. You have to make a conscious decision that I believe I can do it, right? We can actually accomplish this, and I'm going to do this. And if you don't do those first two things, it never happens. It never will happen. So you have to believe that we can really bring some great times to Toledo, and I really do believe there are some good things coming, and we're already seeing it, right? And I think we need to decide to do it together and inspire each other and feed off each other and stick together in this. And if we can do those two things, the rest just happens. So I hope that we can this energy can ring out, and we can take this with us when we leave today. So thank you very much.